Natalie, is there any way I could have your jacket? Natalie?
Valerie, the tribe has spoken.
Thank you, Joe.
Natalie?
Hello, welcome to Trash Opinions, where we talk all things trash. I am your host, Trash, and today we are talking about David vs. Goliath, a season where the theme sounds dumb on paper, but the amazing cast turns it into the last truly top-tier season, in my opinion. It's made for people like me with ADHD, and there's just always something happening, and it just never stops being interesting. I highly recommend this as an essential season to watch. There are so many amazing boots this season, and over half of the tribal councils are really interesting. Before we get into it, please like, comment, and subscribe, and without further ado, let's just get right on into David vs. Goliath. Starting this list off, once again, we have the first boot. We have Jessica Pete. Jessica Pete lies about her age even though she is obviously not old enough to drink yet. For a first boot, she's a decent player. She's booted because she's creating alliances and targeting Lyrsa, so it's not like her first boot status makes her a bad player. She surprisingly was decently strategic and social. She's blindsided by Gabby and her alliance is shocked when she's voted out. Jessica could have been a much more interesting character had she lasted longer, and there's much worse first boots out there as far as characters go, but regardless, I'm gonna have to put her in meh. The next spot, we move way down the boot order. We have Allison Raebold. Allison seems to exist for people to say, I want Allison out, and then to vote someone else. Allison really doesn't do much despite making it all the way to Final 5 on a pretty top tier season. You'd think she'd be more memorable, but she's not. She's not terrible by any means. When she does have content, it does give you the impression she's just a sweet lady. But compared to how amazing most of this cast is, she's a massive outlier as the most purpled member of the cast. She just doesn't do enough to take her out of meh. Now, in the outro of my last video, I alluded to a specific person on this cast that I really deeply don't like, and I considered putting him at the bottom in the fuck you tier and giving him the scooping treatment, but I decided not to, because him being a terrible person is not nearly as bad as what Scoopin did at the end of the day, so I'm gonna stick with only giving Scoopin the Scoopin treatment, but here we actually have Nick Wilson. I kinda hate Nick Wilson outside of the game, but I'm gonna try to be objective here. Nick is booked as a rootable underdog who had a rough upbringing and is trying to grow and become a person who can connect with people emotionally. Shame what his growth turned him into, but I'm not gonna get into politics here. He teams up with Mike and Angelina after the swap, and that becomes the final three. He is also well integrated in the old Davids as well, having relationships with Carl and Davey, and he shows them the steal vote advantage that he finds. He gets blindsided on the Carl vote, which then breaks up the Mason-Dixon alliance, and he's not so much in the know as you would expect the winner to be. His idol play at Final 7 is really interesting though. I've never seen a guy play a fake idol just to get a read, only to play the real one afterwards. He then wins out immunities to guarantee himself to the final three, and in a just world, this is where he would lose the mic. However, the theory I accept is that Jeff or production got into Mike's ear like, you better not take this underdog win away from this poor Kentucky boy. You're a Hollywood elite millionaire, and that's why Mike gave up the game basically at Final Tribal Council, and Nick gets the win. Not to say Nick played a bad game. He does build a strong alliance that becomes the final three, and he does beat him, and he does build bonds and has a story at the end. He's impressive as a player. He just didn't play the best game. It was easily Mike. Nick, to me, though, is not the most captivating character in the world. He's like a less interesting JT from Tocantins. I honestly have a meh reaction to his win, and what he did with his status as a Survivor winner after his season, I'm not a fan of either. I just don't like Nick, but I will admit he can be viewed as a rootable underdog who got to change his life with his Survivor winnings. He has a really good Final Tribal Council performance where he portrays himself as the underdog who overcame everything and played a great social game, and it works. Nick's a winner I was never really big on despite me recognizing the merits of his game. He can go in the bottom of underdog. Next up, we are back to the early boots, and we have Beth Nean. Apparently, her nickname in the MMA world is the Kill Her Bee, which is badass. It makes her seem like she's Cammy from Street Fighter. Bee is a sweetheart. Her opening about being in an abusive relationship for 5 years and saying how she now teaches self-defense classes to women was really good content that made me want to root for her. I'm glad she got to take the power back in her life. She's rootable for sure and was well integrated in an alliance on that David tribe, but sadly she tears her MCL during an immunity challenge and quits the game because she doesn't want to risk further injury to it. It's one of the more understandable quits because as someone who watches a lot of sports, MCL injuries are extremely serious and can be career enders, and it's not worth giving up years of paychecks off your already probably short sports career in order to maybe win a game of Survivor. I do not fault her at all for it. You need to take care of your knees if you're an athlete. I've seen so many careers end just on a single knee injury. Not everyone can be Adrian Peterson. Most end up like Bo Jackson. She seems to be boxing now, which is cool. She's won her first 2 bouts in a unanimous decision, so it seems like her career's on the up, which is good to hear. Bee's in cute. We are actually already getting into decently interesting characters, and here we have Cara K. Her and Dan get into a showmance on day 1, and it's like, girl, you're gonna get yourself voted out. But then she lasts all the way to the finale, so what do I know? She gets blindsided on the Natalia boot, and her reaction is amazing, as well as Natalia's, obviously. She's then reunited with Dan, and then separated again as Dan is booted out of the game, and from then on, Cara K is just barely there. I was reminded she existed because Carl drunkenly told her his plans to vote out Allison, which pisses her off. Cara plays an under-the-radar game and doesn't have a lot of win equity if she gets to the end up against Mike and Nick, and I think maybe she wins an Allison, Cara, Angelina Final 3, but that was never happening because Angelina was never flipping on her boys. Cara is a decent character. I get why people like her, but she also could have done a lot more for me as a person who makes it all the way to 4th. She loses to Mike in a fire-making challenge and ends up as the final member of the jury. She's likable and rootable enough to land her in mildly entertaining. We now have someone who is surprisingly pretty good, and that is Natalia Aka. I laughed so hard when she popped out of frame behind Mike to yell, "He was on The Amazing Race!" Underrated moment. While she's mostly invisible in the episode before her boot, I like Natalia. I love how insecure she gets about Cara and Elizabeth bonding over being horse girls. That's girls who love horses, not girls who are horses. She then targets Elizabeth, and Alex decides to flip on her, and Natalia goes out, and she's just salty as shit. She has an amazing boot travel. She goes full Michaela and stares down Alex, saying, "I knew it. I knew I couldn't trust you." And then she tells Alex to shut up when he's trying to apologize to her. And when Alex smiles when Natalia asks Cara if she knew, she snaps, going, "Oh my god, I can't with you right now." It was fantastic. I started to dislike how cordial everyone's been these past few seasons about being voted out, so it's awesome seeing someone get this pissed off again. She goes out in a bang, and it elevates her from being in low C tier to being high mid C tier. I actually wouldn't mind seeing her again. She's going in mildly entertaining. Speaking of aforementioned horse girl, we have Elizabeth Olsen. Elizabeth is a lot of fun. She's a food service cowgirl and immediately bonds with Lyrsa. How much her and Carl butt heads is a lot of fun. I love how much they hate each other. There hasn't been a relationship this volatile in a while. I love Elizabeth saying, "I hate lazy people and I hate stupid people." It's so funny. Angelina also tries some obvious jury management by telling Elizabeth that she's the vote and that she tried so hard for it not to be her, which Elizabeth then just throws Angelina under the bus at Tribal for it, and Angelina's just looking so shady already. It's so great. Elizabeth came into the merge with no allies, and she gets voted out to minimize the chaos factor. It's the only unanimous merge boot I can think of, at least. Elizabeth goes out as a character that was mildly entertaining. Next up, we have Dan Rengerin. Dan is fun. He finds an idol while the entire tribe is out looking for idols. He has a showmance with Cara and is super obvious about it while Cara's thinking, hey, quit blowing up my spot, dude. He goes into the merge as a part of the Goliath majority, and he plays his idol for Angelina after she begs him to, and it's one of the funniest idol plays in a while. Best part is, because of it, his number one ally in John gets voted out. He feels betrayed by Cara on the John blind side, which frustrates Cara because she knows she needs to cut him eventually, and this makes it harder. He thinks he's golden with his two idols, but he has no idea about Carl's idol nullifier, which gets played on him, and he goes home as the Davids swing the numbers in their favor. He's sniped out in a very fun way, and I would say he belongs in Fun Downfall. After Dan, we have the very next boot, and that is Alec Merino. Before the swap, I kept getting him confused with Dan. He should have stuck with the blowout hairdo somehow. Maybe then I could tell who he was. He starts actually getting content with being the swing vote on the Natalia boot episode. He starts a huge sus train by whispering into Elizabeth's ear during Tribal, and it's kinda awesome. He starts quiet, but he starts playing super hard and cutthroat coming into the merge. I love how in a metaphor he's describing, he calls Christian the hottest girl he's ever seen in his life, which I would rather purposefully take out of context for my own amusement. Alec comes into his own as a character, and he ends up a rootable dude, and you feel how emotional he is when he knows he's exhausted all his options and that he's going home. Alec is a lot more fun than I expected, and he's going into mildly entertaining. Going back to the pre-merge boots, we have Jeremy Crawford. I love how direct Jeremy is. He's overly honest, and it's a treat. Him having that clarity moment like, maybe I am bossy, I should work on that, is great. He tries to bond with Natalie over the fact that they're both black people on Survivor, and she just pushes him away without giving him a second thought, and it's hilarious. He also gets some sympathetic content when he's talking about his relationship with his father. It's really sweet. He's not a very good social player, despite being very smart and strategic. He gets paranoid and tells his tribe to stop having side conversations, which is hilariously misguided. I love how he just absolutely roasts Natalie at the tribal council of his boot episode, and he's just blowing up everything. Jeremy comes close to great tier, but I'm actually going to put him where Bryce is, near the top of mildly entertaining. At number 10, we have the last member of the rootable tier. We have Brodu. Carl immediately brands himself as a hard worker willing to sacrifice McDonald's drive-thru breaks in order to deliver his truckloads on time at his job at home. He draws the no buff at the swap and goes to exile, where he finds the first ever idol nullifier, which in my opinion is kind of a broken advantage if you use it right. I would argue it's one of the few advantages that would actually make somebody want to keep you around longer, while also just being an extremely powerful tool in the game to snipe out anyone and not having to worry about an idol play. He uses it to send Dan home, which is a great move since the dude found 2 idols already. He was a danger, and it opened up a lot of options for the Davids. Unfortunately for Carl, he gets drunk as fuck and he starts blabbing to Cara about how he wants to get rid of Allison, which was a bad move on his part because that's been Cara's girl from the start. Speaking of drunk Carl is amazing. I wish we could have been drunk the entire season. Dude's a trip during that reward challenge. He's starting to be viewed as the Godfather, or Carl Father as I would like to call him. He alienates Gabby on his Allison plans, and the Davids flip the game on him, led by Christian and Gabby. Carl's drunken overconfidence does him in. The immunity challenge was some bullshit though. Carl should have won that. He still spelled a word. It just wasn't the word. It should have counted. And dare I say, Carl was robbed. It's still a very fun downfall. Now, starting off the great tier, we get to the first person taken out of the game, not the first boot, but the first one out, and that is Pat Kusac. I really like Pat. He comes into the season as the working class guy who had to work for everything in his life, and it's a relatable story. Pat Kusac rules. He's extremely rootable as the blue collar guy who leads the shelter building on the tribe. He then immediately becomes that guy you realize is going to be the first boot due to his extremely bossy attitude and his New York sailor mouth. I kind of love that he's a Giants fan too. It completes the picture. He might as well be. He's already Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Sadly, he gets taken out day 3 due to the boat slamming down on a wave, and in a freak accident, Pat badly injures his back. It's a real bummer we lost Pat this way. Everybody's crying, and maybe he wouldn't have been the first boot. They were throwing other names out there, and there's a good chance maybe Nick would have went home if Pat hadn't had his accident, and who knows, maybe he makes a decent run. Pat is one of the first names I can think of as a shoo-in for an early boot season, and I'm surprised they never brought him back the way they brought back Bruce for 45. Pat was a delight. He was one of the best examples on the David tribe. It's a shame he was never fully realized. Pat didn't get a chance. Next up, we have my boy, John Hennigan. Johnny Blaze, Johnny Spade, Johnny Nitro, John Morrison, Johnny Mundo, Johnny Impact, Johnny Ultra, the Shaman of Sexy, the Monday Night Delight, the Ambassador of Abdominals, the Maharaja of Manliness, the George Bushy of Tussie, the Mayor of Slamtown, Mr. Abraham Lincoln. I mean, he forgot about Johnny Caballero, Johnny Elite, Johnny Fusion, Johnny Hardy, Johnny Superstar, Johnny TV, Johnny Blackcraft, Johnny Down Under, Johnny Foxwood, Johnny Progress, Johnny Onyx if you want to go way back. This guy's had more name changes than Ed Leslie. Actually, no, he hasn't. I am a huge fan of John Hennigan outside of Survivor, and I am unapologetically bringing my bias into it. How'd they get such a legit wrestling star on the show? Yeah, Ashley Massaro was one thing. It's not like she was missing much not being in the 2000s Diva era action, but Johnny is a legitimate star. He's wrestled all over the world. Name a promotion, he's probably been there. I love John on this season. He's such a funny, charming dude, and I love how he bonds with Christian, seeing a little bit of himself in him. They start the Brochachos along with Dan, and they seem to be poised for at least a mid-merge boot run, but on an idle play, Johnny gets booted out on 2 votes on a crazy tribal. John is just so much fun, and I enjoyed his entire run. I loved him comparing the game to a wrestling match. While I wouldn't say he's a great player or anything, he was a blast just to have on the season, and I wouldn't mind seeing him again if he was down for it. He's going and entertaining. Next up, we actually have someone who I think is hugely underrated, and that is Lisa Torres. I feel like if I was on the season, I would have wanted to work with Lisa. I feel like I would have taken one look at her and been like, alright, I already know you're cool. Her entire aesthetic is awesome. Best vibe in Survivor history. She immediately gets picked as the weakest woman by the Goliaths and comes into the first challenge with a chip on her shoulder, in which her and Christian absolutely gobstomp the Goliath tribe in that challenge, and it's awesome. I love her friendship with Elizabeth too. She's a cowgirl and I'm a punk rock lesbian. God, I love Lirsa. Lirsa is so underrated. I think she's a fantastic character, and she's a delight the entire time she lasts. Lirsa is also a badass. She's just so cool the entire time. Lisa gets swapped into a position where on paper she should be on the bottom, but Angelina wants Natalie's jacket, so she's spared. They lose an immunity challenge almost fully due to Mike, but sadly she's just up against literally the final 3 in that tribal, and it sucks because I feel like if she had made the merge, she may have been likable enough to at least make it decently far, but instead our time with Lisa gets cut short, and it's a shame because she seems like such a cool person. I adore Lisa. I think I'm actually going to put her in entertaining. And now, getting into the top 6, we have Gabby Puchi. The scene where Gabby's asking, do you want to play with me? And Christian's like, what, in the sand? And she goes, no, in this game, is the most hilariously wholesome exchange in probably the entire show. It lives rent-free in my head. I love how Gabby immediately latches on to Christian as the 2 nerds. She gets really insecure when Christian starts broing out with John and Dan and thinks he's going to flip to their side. My theory of why she was actually upset is I think she just knows Christian is a way better player than her, and she realizes she picked the number 1 that beats her in the end. She fits the neurotic nerd girl archetype, but she doesn't have the badass arc, sadly. She's actually just overtly emotional the entire time, but it's relatable. I don't knock her for it. I feel like I would be an anxiety-ridden mess too. Gabby's great though. She's so adorable, and I love her making everyone feel bad for her. She then realizes she needs to get rid of Christian and acts on it a little earlier than she should have in my opinion, but it's good she has the cutthroat agency to be able to do that in the first place. It leads to her being idled out earlier than she would have had she not done that. It's a shame because I really liked Gabby. She's a fun character who has an interesting arc, and while I can also make fun of her, I feel like she's also a great character, and I'm going to put her in entertaining. Getting into the top 5, we actually have the last pre-merge boot, and that is Natalie Cole. Natalie Napalm. Natalie Cole is the Pat Kusac of the Goliath tribe, where she's just taking charge and is extremely direct in how she talks to you. She's hilarious. She's like a supervillain. She just stands there and stares over everyone as they're working, and they all notice it. She realizes she's the target and goes full, "What the fuck is wrong with y'all?" asking the entire tribe, "How the hell is the oldest woman on the tribe the biggest threat?" She's so emotionally stone cold too, and I love it. She doesn't give a single shit. Jeremy is trying to connect with her and letting her know what she's doing is wrong and how she can improve her standing with the tribe, and she's having none of it. And she just asks him if he's finished. He even goes as far as to literally spell it out, that they're both black people on Survivor, and that he, as a black man, has invested interest in seeing her, a black woman, go far and progress in this game, and that it goes deeper than anything in the game could really go. And she's standing there like, "Nope, not gonna listen to you. Nothing is wrong with me. I'm doing everything right." Jeremy is basically waving that olive branch in her face and yelling, "Grab it!" as she's just stonewalling him. Natalie is amazing. She's an incredibly bad social player, and she's the perfect goat to take to the end. I would seriously go into that season trying to be Natalie's number 1. Let her make all the decisions and burn all the bridges. I love her line when she's voting out Jeremy, too. The Natalie napalm bit, and then at the end being like, "By the way, your skin is beautiful and all." Like she had to add a compliment at the end. That was beautiful. She continues being unreasonable after the swap, pissing off Lyrsa by arguing with her about eggs. She then bullies Nick for his jacket, only to be voted out and to be asked for her jacket. It's possibly the funniest vote out ever, how silent Natalie is as Natalie's going, "Natalie, can I have your jacket? Natalie? Natalie? Natalie?" Chef's kiss. It's amazing. It's so good. It's a highlight of this fantastic season, and I love it. I love how she puts on this jacket to do her vote out confessional too, when she didn't have it on during Tribal. Natalie is a national treasure, and probably the best character to go out of pre-merge this season. Natalie is an entertaining. Now we are getting into, in my opinion, the big 4 of the season, starting out with my boy David Rickenbacher. David got an octopus. A freaking octopus! I immediately loved Davey. He's just a big nerd who gets so excited about everything, and it's so endearing. He also reminded me of the fact that PT Cruisers exist. He's so passionate about everything, and it's infectious. I love how he distracts the tribe with martial arts as Nick looks for the idol. For some reason, I found him swinging that pole around to be really entertaining. I also love his reaction to idling out John, saying he took down the mayor of Slantown. "I got his jacket." Davey is so awesome. He navigates the game extremely well and is well liked by the entire tribe. And as far as the Davids go, he's one of the better players for sure, and it's awesome seeing how he can stay low-key despite being a big threat on paper. He wins some immunities and rewards, proves he belongs there, and is a hero for nerds all over. I love how he's not fazed by Angelina's sob story over giving up immunity for Rice and picks Cara over her anyway. He finds the immunity idol, and God tells him not to risk it, and he takes a 1-round idol. How much he talks to himself during that scene is also hilarious. I'm so glad Davey made it all the way to the finale. He's an absolute delight. He's adorable and respectable, and it's hard not to love the guy. I love his vote out too. He could have spelled my name right, and him howling like a wolf. I also loved him asking how the David and Goliath roles were reversed at Final Tribal Council, because that's an interesting aspect of the theme that wasn't really explored on the season. How could you not love Davey? He's going into love. And now, the number 2 and number 3 spots I actually swapped back and forth between because I couldn't decide who I liked more. But here at number 3, we have Angelina Key. Natalie? Natalie? Angelina is a trip. She's out of her mind, and I love her. She does great work before her first tribal council by convincing the tribe to vote Jeremy out over Natalie, which was the right choice for her game. I love how she shows her two closest allies how sneaky she could be when she's part of the plans during the Natalie boot and tells them she's not going to vote for her so she can try and convince Natalie to give her her jacket. How can you trust her after that? Clearly she's a snake. At least she mends it by being obvious in jury management when she tells Elizabeth she's going to be the merge boot and how she goes full damage control, making up a story that literally nobody believes is peak Angela. She has this coach honor code where she needs to uphold that she is a genuine person when she is nothing but. It's amazing. Angelina is such a fantastic character. I love how she's the mouthpiece for speaking out against sexism on Survivor on this season because it's Angelina and she's a massive hypocrite, so it's just kind of hilarious how this is the spokeswoman. She talks about how women never find immunity idols and then gives Allison a fake idol like, wow, you're just going to build Allison up after saying that only to have the rug pulled out from under her? That's cold. She's an asshole in a way that I find fascinating. Like, she is so fake but has convinced herself that she's an amazing person, and I love it. Angelina plays martyr when she sits out of an immunity challenge for Rice on one of Jeff's strangely generous days. Jeff used to be like, alright, you can have this rice, but 3 people have to cut off a toe. But Angelina falls oh so heroically on that sword and keeps bringing up how she sacrificed immunity for Rice. It's hilarious. She's so salty about it too. She's like, I stepped out of a challenge for you guys, what the F? Like she made some big sacrifice. God, I love her. Angelina defeats the odds of women fighting an idol by fighting an idol with the help of 2 men who are just letting her get the idol because they see her as no type of threat whatsoever. But it doesn't matter, it's a point for women all over the world. Feminist trailblazer Angelina Key. She's so overtly political too. Everyone sees through her bullshit, but she keeps trying to take that pleasing everyone route, even though everyone knows she's inauthentic, but she keeps trying to wear that mask like, no guys, I swear I'm being real and honest, even though, no Angelina, we can see the drawstring. She talks about climbing the ladder, and the jury's amazed reaction actually had me laughing, because Angelina would never have found that idol without Nick holding up the ladder and Mike finding the clue. She leaves that part out, which is hilarious. Angelina acts like she was Indiana Jones and valiantly scaling a rock wall looking for this idol. She's ridiculous and I love her. One of the poster girls for 0 vote finalists, being amazingly chaotic, messy characters. Angelina is an absolute treasure and she needs to come back. For sure is a favorite. Right above her, we have the other finalist. We have Mike White. I love his line, wait, are you saying that people are lying? Mike White is, in a word, amazing. I still need to watch White Lotus. This reminded me of that fact. One Survivor rumor I desperately want to be true is that Mike was sneaking in THC pills into Survivor because having it in your head that he's just high the whole time makes him slightly more enjoyable. I really wanted Mike's to win. I love his can't we all just get along shirt. I love his entire vibe, and it sucks he just kind of gave up at the very end. He starts off the season with a target on his back when he immediately starts looking for an idol. He thankfully smartens up and escapes being the first booted from the Goliaths. He is also social enough to form a 3 with Angelina and Nick to avoid being the boot during the Natalie and Lyrsa votes despite being the weakest on the tribe. Once he's at the merge, he's liked by pretty much everyone. Gabby asks, why is he so funny? Probably because he's a comedy writer? He forms an alliance of 6 as a backup plan for when his Goliath alliance crumbles, and it takes him all the way to the end. And had he been allowed to win, I feel like this is one of the best winners ever. I feel like Mike acts the same way I would on the island. He's just kind of over everything about the outdoors, cracking jokes, looking tired all the time. He retires under the bench during an immunity challenge for shade and asks Jeff, can I opt out of opting out? out, which I would do. I would constantly ask if I could just hang out in the jungle after I'm out of an endurance challenge, realistically after 10 seconds, give or take, because I can't imagine just sitting there in the hot sun for hours waiting for one of these assholes to just give up. He's so good at pretending he's just a big useless whiny baby who can't handle it while at camp. I feel like I was being represented. Mike grabbing his wine when they're all scrambling to look for the idol is also something I would do. I felt seen in that moment. Mike is amazing. He beats Cara in firemaking, and he seems poised to win this season because he played one of the best social games ever played, but he just absolutely gives up at Final Tribal Council. I still don't think he was allowed to win. He was friends with Jeff Probst, and they probably didn't want the millionaire Hollywood guy to win over a guy who grew up in the trailer park. Regardless, Mike was robbed, and he should have won the season. I highly doubt he will ever return because he's just too close to Jeff Probst, and Jeff really doesn't want him back. I feel like Jeff assumed he would be an early boot, not one of the best social players of the season. I don't think he wants a rich celebrity to win. I personally would have loved to see it, though. Oh well. Mike's still an amazing character, and he's going into favorite. And at number 1, we of course have the true MVP of the season, and that is Christian Hubicki. Do you know what a Reuben sandwich is, Jeff? Dr. Christian Hubicki starts off amazing, and he never hits the brakes. He's a Rick Moranis character come to life in the best possible ways. He's neurotic and talks a mile a minute, and I'd imagine he has to talk that fast in order to keep up with his brain, because the man is brilliant with no exaggeration. He's not even annoying. I've heard podcasts with him, and I feel like I would be able to listen to him talk for hours. The dude's just a fascinating man. I love him talking about the logistics of Slamtown, and I love how much he bonds with John Hennigan, forming the Brochachos. How fascinated he is by professional wrestling also scores a lot of points with me, because that's a thing a lot of non-wrestling fans miss out on, just how absolutely fascinating everything about it is, from the history to simply how they do different moves. Christian is just amazing. Him talking to Jeff during the immunity challenge for 5 hours makes that challenge one of my favorites in the entire series, since it's hilarious imagining how much it emotionally wears down Alec, and Jeff's just loving it. Christian manages to survive all the way to Final 7 despite being seen as a huge threat from the start of the merge. The way he plans it is great despite only making it to the episode before the finale. He then has an absolutely brilliant idol play at Final 8 that gets the turncoat Gabby idled out of the game. He's so entertaining with everything he does, and he has a quip for absolutely everything. He charms the pants off everyone and understands how to find idols and navigate the game strategically. He's the awkward nerd minus the anxiety. He doesn't need an arc to become cool. He just is cool, and it's why he's such a massive target. Everyone just loves the dude. Christian is quite possibly one of the best narrators the show has ever seen, too. He's a great storyteller, and he's really good at giving you insight into the game and where he is at. He's like a non-annoying version of Cochran mixed with Ryan Ulrich, Stephen Fishback, and with some Aubrey Bracco thrown in. He's just a complete nerd package and the best nerd character archetype we ever got on the show. I absolutely love the dude. I desperately want him to try for a return, even though he might be a huge target coming in and getting sniped out early most likely, but it still just would be nice to see him again. Christian is an absolute treat and a true top-tier Survivor character, and he is going amongst the best in favorite. And there we have David versus Goliath. In my opinion, one of the best newcomer casts of the modern era. There is not a lot of duds. Most of the cast at least brings something to the table as far as entertainment values, and I even found B to be enjoyable, even though some may call her a dud. Christian is an all-time great character, and Angelina, Davey, Mike are all fantastic characters, not counting out some of the really good early boots in Natalie, Jeremy, Pat, Natalia. I am sad to see that this is the last season I'm doing that I consider one of my favorite seasons. Maybe that will change in the upcoming videos. There are still 10 seasons left to go in this series, followed by my final countdown, which will be a massive project. And then after that, we will move on to new subjects. But if you made it this far, thank you so much. You're amazing. And next on the docket, we have Edge of Extinction, A season that I don't remember a lot of, but a lot of people defend it and say it's good. I'm sure it's great. I know Reem is amazing. I will see you in Edge of Extinction. Thank you so much. Goodbye.